Alright guys, so this is a disclaimer that I'm going to be putting in front of the next couple videos. What I'm going to be doing over the next, this weekend, today, and probably tomorrow, is I'm going to be opening up the Rb25 Got a lot of parts that I've been collecting for this operation. I have the water pump, head gasket, valve cover gasket over here. I have the N1 oil pump, ARP studs, HKS timing belt over here. All of this is what I'm going to be installing when I open up the motor. So it's going to be one big install session, but I want to give each piece its own video. So I'll probably be reusing like the teardown footage and stuff like that up until the point where I replace whatever part the video is after. And that's more so for the people that's like following the channel, just so that, you know, if you see repetition within the next couple videos, that's what it is. If this is the first video you've seen it, cool. If this is another one or the second or third one, just feel free to skip until the actual part that you need, because you got a lot of work to do. Water pump is going to be right here, timing belt is under the cover, valve cover gaskets up here, head gasket of course in the middle. So just for starters, there's that, and then the head studs and all that stuff. I am going to install the injectors, but I'm not really going to make a video on this because it's literally just adding some grease to it and sticking it in there, so that's not video worthy for me. Those will be installed in the process of me doing all this, but I won't make a video on that. So with that being said, let's get started with this teardown. And then for the cover, I'm going to be taking off both pieces, so all this stuff is going to have to come off as well. But for starters, we're going to start with the top. That's going to be 1, 2, 3, it's 4 on this side, 5 up here. And keep in mind, cam angle sensor, please mark where it currently is so that you can put it back in the same place when you take it off, because this is gonna really affect how your engine performs when you put it back together if it's not aligned properly. So there's that. And that's pretty much how to get the top parts off. As for these timing components, I'm gonna do that second, and then I'll show you guys how to go about getting all these belts off and stuff like that, so that we can get to the bottom side in order to do the water pump and the oil pump and all that good stuff. So yeah, let's go ahead and knock this off and then resume. All right, so for the front, I took a marker and I marked kind of roughly where every bolt is, similar to this one, for the cam angle sensor, in case I have to take it off. Not 100% sure if you need to, but you may need to, so I marked it anyway. And all these bolts are 10 millimeters. I already broke them loose for the most part. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are 10s as well, I believe. Yeah. So those are 10 millimeters as well. That's all you're gonna need to take off all of this. I'm gonna go ahead and disassemble this real quick and go from there. So I did take the cam angle sensor out. Be very careful with that. Those are, if you don't already know, they're extremely delicate and very important for your engine to run right. But after I took that off, this is pretty much loose, as you can see. So this is probably just a matter of time until it's off. So of course you got to kind of like finesse it a little bit. Something maybe, nope, never mind, it just slides up. So yep, after you get all that done, timing cover's off, and there's your timing belt. Mine looks like it's in pretty decent condition, honestly. I'm changing it anyway, but yeah, it's always nice to inspect this stuff before you continue further. But like I said, I'm changing mine anyway. So that is where you get access to your timing belt. Now, in order to change the belt, there's some tensioners and stuff that's on the bottom side that you're gonna have to get out and out and untensioned, so that you can, you know, loosen this up so that you can pull it off and everything. But this is how you get to this point. Now I gotta go ahead and get this ready because this is gonna be powder coated as well. All right, so now the next steps that we have are getting these belts off, these accessory belts. So the alternator belt, power steering belt, and the AC compressor belt. And in addition to that, the harmonic balancer has to come off for the oil pump. Now this, to get this out the way, I'm pretty sure it's just these 10 mils that I broke loose, and that pops off this fan housing or fan mount shroud cooling thing, whatever. This is only the OEM clutch fan. This is where it mounts to, if you have one. This is pretty much the way to get that off. It's just these bolts. They're 10 millimeters. I used the socket. I already broke them loose. Pop those off, and then this thing should come off, give you a little more access. But I'm gonna do that off camera when I have more than one hand. And what I figured out for that is you need to untension it through the alternator. You see this bracket has a slidey thing that brings it in. Once that brings it in, tension on this belt goes off, and you can easily just unloop it. So what I did is I went ahead and marked with the same marker. I don't know, it kind of looks like a shadow, but it's right there. I'll drop an arrow where it was tensioned before I got started, because when you put it back together, you're gonna have to retension it correctly. You don't want to have too much tension, and you don't want to have too little tension on belts. So that's why I went ahead and marked it, and we are good to go now. This is the adjustment bolt, 12 millimeter socket. Just go ahead and loosen that up. Okay, so you're good to go on that. And then there is another one on the back here. Same thing, 12 millimeter. And it should be, I don't know if I can break this loose with one hand at this angle. 14 mil. So what I'm gonna do is just pop this off, pop that one on, and try to loosen that. Looks like I'm gonna need two hands again. All right, that one was really on there. I had to get the bigger ratchet to get that off, or to get that loose. But that's loose now. All right, I did figure it out. So yeah, you do loosen this one because that's the pivot bolt thing. I tightened this one back a little bit just to make it snug, because that's holding it into this bracket, but it's really this bolt. You just loosen this one as much as you need to, and then you can just simply pop it in like that. And as you can see, that alleviates all the tension, and that's how you can get the belt off. So it's pretty much just that simple. You can take this bolt all the way out, because the farther out it's going to be, the more it's going to allow you to push it in. I don't want to take it out. I just want to have it at the point where I can just pop off the belts like so. And there you go. For the power steering, as far as getting this belt untensioned, there is 3 bolts. Well, actually there's probably 2, but I loosened 3. So there's the main one that's going to be in here. Let's see if I can get it. That is a 14 millimeter bolt. You're going to crack that one loose just like you cracked this one loose on the alternator. You want to crack this one loose. This is a 12 millimeter. That is on the tensioner bracket. And then the bolt that is on here, I don't know if you can see it or not. Let me get out there. This is also a 12 millimeter. You want to back that off. And once you do all that, you'll be able to simply just push this one in, just like the alternator, and then boom, that's how you get that belt off. And that is the first one. So I don't know, you probably want to do that one first, second do the AC, and then third do the alternator. It doesn't fully matter, but you know, it's up to you. So now we're gonna do the AC one. I'm gonna have to figure this one out. So let's get this fully off. Get it off of this breaker bar. And one thing that I would say is try to label what goes where as you're doing this, so that when you put things back together, you're not having too many problems. This belt is not really worn down too much. It is like kind of rusty, but it's like mostly surface rust, and it's in pretty good condition, so it's good. They do make accessory belts for the RB engine that I do plan on replacing once I go forged. I'm gonna replace pretty much everything that I haven't touched already. So let's go ahead and do this AC, and then we'll be good to go. One side note, top dead center, outside of what I gave earlier or in the other videos, these are the timing marks that'll tell you top dead center as well. So make sure to line those up before you take this timing belt off. These belts don't matter as far as timing, but this does. And it also, goes with the cams and stuff. Like I said, if that clip is in this video. So, yeah, like I said, let me figure this one out. I'm pretty sure the tensioner is somewhere with this because I see the slot for it, but I'll know in a second. AC belt is really easy. There's nothing with the AC. You just crack this bolt loose. This is a 14, and then there's a bolt underneath here that is a 12, and that is, let's see if I can get it for you. This one right here, that is the adjustment one for the tensioner. So you just pop that loose, adjust this upwards, and then this one just comes on out. And that's pretty much how you get all the belts off, all the accessory belts off. They're pretty simple. Something that you're gonna have to do if you want to take the head off of the motor. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and organize, all these belts, and from that point on we'll continue with this teardown. So for this one, it was those 4 bolts that were holding this in on the little fan thing, the 410. There it is. The 4 10mm nuts that were holding that in. This just was being a prick to come off. But once you undo those, I had to pry it off in a couple areas and get it all, same old screwdriver and hammer type of deal. Then the actual pulley, this was left on here. Pretty sure this just, that just slides off. I'm gonna put that over here with it. And now you have the water pump pulley ready to go. So I think I said it in the last clip, but the next thing that has to come off is this crank bolt here. So what you got to do, if you're in the car, just find something to basically lock onto this and lock onto this breaker bar or whatever it is you're using, and then turn the car over and it should pop loose. But since I'm not in the car and this is not a running engine, I have to find something that's going to hold the engine in place and then pop this bolt off. So it's going to be more difficult. Another thing about those timing marks, the first mark on this harmonic balancer lines up with this timing mark on the cover. So there's that as well. But that is needed to get this harmonic balancer off, this cover off, and get access to the oil pump underneath, as well as the timing belt tensioners. So let's go ahead and see if we can figure this out. I'll show you what setup I come up with as far as getting this harmonic balancer off, and then we'll go from there. All right, so as far as getting this thing off, I didn't find a way to wedge it without like moving the whole engine assembly when I was trying to use the breaker bar. So impact, that's what you're gonna need. Unless you have a way that you can keep the engine from rotating from the back side, you're gonna need an impact to get this thing off. what was I saying? Outside of keeping the engine from rotating on the backside, and if it's in the car, you can kind of take a ratchet, stick it on here, and then fasten it to the loop on here, and then turn the car over. That'll pop it loose as well. But this pretty much got the job done. So we are good to go there. I'm gonna try to rotate this back to top dead center before popping this harmonic balancer off. So there's that, and then once you get this off, then it's the cover. But make sure you put it back to top dead center beforehand, because like I said, once you do that, once you interrupt all this, your timing is just out of whack, and it's just gonna be, you're gonna have to retime everything. So try to avoid that.
Oh, it's happening. Nice.
Yeah, that's how you get it.
We can just put an impact on this bitch.
I prefer slow and steady. I don't want to damage the threads because I don't have another harmonic balancer.
Smart man. Oh, back it up.
That's how you get that off right there. Harmonic balancer.
Feel how heavy it is.
Damn, this shit thick. All right, I'm gonna put that here for now. But always make sure to remember to have your engine at top dead center before you take that off. So lastly, you just got to remove this cover. 1, 2, 3 bolts for the cover, and that gives you access to the oil pump bolts. So I'm gonna take this off and then we'll continue. All right, so it's got some gunk on it. That has some gunk on it. Pop this damn thing. Get your ass. There we go. And now you got access to everything for the timing belt and the oil pump. You got the 2 tensioners right here. Mine's actually don't looking like they're in a bad condition at all.
There's a little surface rust.
Surface rust, but overall, I mean, my timing belt's good. I'm just replacing it anyway with the HKS. But yeah, most people will replace this. If yours is bad and super rusted, do replace these. But yeah, mine is looking good. So we'll go ahead and get that. But now you got access to the water pump bolts, the oil pump bolts, and the timing belt stuff too. All this has to come off in order to get the head off anyway. Well, the timing belt does in order to get the head off anyway. So that's the step that we're at. What you want to do is loosen these tensioners, and that'll release the tension on here. You'll be able to pull the belt off. 14mm bolt for the idler, or I mean not the idler, the tensioner. Pop that loose. That'll move this way and release this tension. So I'm gonna do that. Take this timing belt off. Can't stress to you enough how important it is to make sure this is at top dead center before you do all of this. If you don't take anything from this video, top dead center. That is all. On to the next clip. All right, so after you get the timing belt components off, technically speaking, you can go ahead and pull the head. I got a lot of oil on for that. That's for the oil pump video. But yeah, after you get the timing belt components off, that's when you can start working on pulling the head. As far as I know, so I've already taken the liberty of loosening all the head studs, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull those out and then see if there's anything else, bam, that hold this in. So you got the head studs, and I was told it was 3 bolts, so there's this one. I would expect another one on that side, and somewhere I would expect one in the front, but maybe not. I was told it was one by the water pump, but I don't see anything. So it might just be those 2 bolts. Unless it's this one or something. but I think that's on the head as well. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take those two out, the two in the back. I'm gonna take those out and take out the head studs and see if this thing comes off. And then if it does come off, we're good. If it doesn't come off, then something else is holding it in, and I'll see what that is as well. So as you saw in the last clip, I have taken the head off. In that time lapse, there is one thing that I didn't show in the video, and that was the third bolt. So these 3 bolts hold the head in. Those 2 I showed, they're in the back. This one is in the front, and this is the top of the power steering pulley. It goes right here. As you can see, it bolts to the block, and then this one comes up and bolts to the head. Outside of that, get all the studs out. You can pop this thing straight off. I'm using the hoist, so I don't know how heavy it is. It doesn't seem like it's that heavy, but it definitely seems like it'll be awkward. Then you take a look underneath. So this is the factory head gasket that I'm going to be replacing. That's the whole reason that we're here. But as far as the pistons, I'm pretty happy with this. I am very happy with what I'm seeing here, because it doesn't look like this head gasket was blown. And one thing that's pretty common with the RB engines, especially one that's been sitting, after, it's been imported and just sitting there for a while, there's a pretty good chance that you'll end up with coolant in these back cylinders. And they're pretty good. On top of that, as far as the cylinders and cylinder rust, I'm not seeing too much of anything. So yeah, I'm very happy about that. So as far as this, the next step you want to do, actually let me take a look at the not too bad up here either. They're looking pretty good. So as far as this, the next steps that you want to take is, of course, you want to remove the factory head gasket, and then you want to clean this off. Okay, you really want to make sure that you clean it off. What everybody is going to suggest is that you take the block and the head to a machine shop and get it decked. I mean, that's the proper way to do it. That's the guaranteed way to make sure that your gasket gets 100% seal. If you were still doing stock head studs with a aftermarket gasket, you probably wouldn't get a good seal. But since I'm doing ARP head studs with the cosmetic gasket, if I clean it off, I should be fine. And I'm going to clean it off with a razor blade and all that stuff. But that's only aftermarket head gasket ARP studs. If you're using stock studs, you're going to have to get it resurfaced, unless you're going to go and use the stock gasket or something like that, which I definitely do not recommend. Of all gaskets to replace, this is the one to do so. But yeah, so that is pretty much that. But yeah, so I'm gonna start taking this multi-layered OEM gasket, oh it's disgusting, off, and you can see it leaves a lot of residue on it. But that's what we're cleaning it off for. You want to make sure these gaskets feel sealed properly. But there you have it, folks. That is the gasket removal. One thing that you kind of want to get in the habit of, just to make sure that you're buying the right parts, just line this stuff up. Make sure that you got the right part. Make sure that every hole lines up, every hole matches, and it looks like we're good to go. Because I think that there's a coolant hole or something like that over here in the Neo that is not in the regular 25. So if you were to got a regular 25, you would see one of these holes on the OEM gasket blocked off. But that is not the case because we got a gasket for a Neo. So yeah, now it's time to clean this up. I'm gonna stop talking, I'm gonna clean it off, and it's probably gonna take a long time, but we'll go ahead and do that. All right, so now we have the ARP studs. I went ahead and cleaned off that as much as I can, both bottom side and the head side. As far as ARP instructions, they pretty much say if you can clean the threads prior to putting the studs in, definitely do that. The lubrication is going to go on the end that has the nut, or that the nut goes onto it. The nut only goes onto one side, so it will not thread onto the bottom side. And let's see what else. They do provide the lubrication right there. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread the stud, this stud specifically, into each thing just to kind of clean up the threads and stuff. And then once I'm done threading these in, or once I'm done threading this one into everything, we'll install all of them. The first step outside of cleaning the threads and stuff is they say for you to install all of the studs hand tight. So you don't need to torque them down when they're going in here just yet. Hand tight is what they recommend. And then put the head on, and once the head is on and everything is good to go, then you torque them down, and I'll go over that with you guys once I'm there. Another thing, I'm gonna put this as a disclaimer because I might have destroyed my engine, but there actually is a fourth stud, or a fourth nut that holds the head in. It's a small one, but it matters, and that one is by the water pump. So if you look at this damage here, that's from a stud that came off in the process of me putting this head in, or pulling this head. If you look up here, you'll see that there is a stud indeed. That stud is behind the intake manifold. I don't know if you guys can see it in there, just barely, but there it is. That's the water pump stud. So definitely would recommend to get that out before pulling the head. From a standpoint, I'm not going to lose like compression or anything. I think this is a coolant passage. If anything, I'll have a coolant leak, but I still have a decent enough amount of gasket surface right there, so I'm not too concerned. And then I'm gonna just put some extra sealant and stuff on the outside of this just in case. But that's the only note that I got for that. But yeah, outside of that, I will go on to the point where I'm putting the head back on. They're really good about making it so you can't fuck these up. They only thread in one way, but on top of that, these hex screw things, what are these things called? There's only one side where they're on, and it's a T27 that goes into them. So if you can't like get a good grip on it, just use a T27 Allen key, that's what they're called, and pop that in there as well. So lastly, I'm gonna throw the gasket on, and then we're gonna let this thing back down on the block. Okay, head gasket is on, and then as you can see, I have the ARP supplied what is this thing called? Assembly lubricant, yeah, on the actual studs. The next step is to install the head, and then after you install the head, you are to put the assembly lube on the bolts and washers that come with the kit as well. So assembly lube on the studs, assembly lube on the bolts and washers. But now it's time for me to install the head, or reinstall the head. So I'm gonna do that, and then we're gonna cut back to after I put the lube on the bolts and washers, and it's time to torque these down. The head is on there, and then I drop the shims in every one. Be careful, like if you have the cams in, be careful with how you drop the shims in, because if you look, I know for both of these front ones, there's a port that goes into like the rest of the head, and I drop that shim into the front port twice, but luckily I have the little magnetic pickup thing, so I was able to get it out, and I dropped the shim back here into that port once. But they're all on the studs now, so they're good to go. I'm just saying be careful with that, and then like I said, lube these up and torque them down. Torque spec is 80 foot-pounds in 3 stages, so I'm gonna do 26, then 52, and then 80. And then there's a specific pattern that you want to go when torquing all these down. You don't want to do it like that. You want this head to rest evenly. So like I said, I'm gonna lube these up and then get them on there. I'll cut to when I start torquing. The ARP bolts for this kit are 13 millimeter 12-point sockets. If you have a 5-point socket, it's not gonna work. It has to be a 12-point. So, one thing I will say is it's a lot easier to torque this stuff down if you have it on a engine stand or if it's in the car. As you saw when I was trying to do the final stage at 80 foot-pounds, this thing was moving. But regardless, it's in there. All of the studs are torqued down to the 80 foot-pounds. Easy way to kind of remember the pattern is you start in the middle, and then it's kind of like a spiral. So middle, middle, 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2, final 2, final 2, and then do it again. So that's just how I remember it, but you definitely want to follow that pattern so that the head can torque down evenly. But with that being said, that is the install of the ARP studs and the head gasket. Everything else you would basically just rebolt back together. So follow the steps of this video in reverse and you are good to go. So hope that this helped you out. Like, comment, subscribe, follow the build, and till then, see you next time.